Here's a question. Who should be able to discipline Buffalo police officers? Our partner at Investigative Post, they looked into this. The mayor and police commissioner say they were stripped of any power to discipline bad police officers in union negotiations a decade ago. But questions about discipline came up in 2020 after 75-year-old Marty Gugino, a protester, was shoved to the ground by police as seen on video. The two officers involved were cleared of any wrongdoing. Fast forward now, 2024. Reform advocates are demanding that the city step up and exercise their power and start disciplining officers. And joining us live in studio right now is Bruce Rushton. He's a reporter with Investigative Post, and you've been following this story closely. We know that. How do we get to this point that an out-of-town arbitrator is deciding if a Buffalo police officer is guilty or not guilty and what punishment he should get? How do we get here?
This really started in 1991 as part of contract negotiations when the police union requested binding arbitration in disciplinary cases. A panel of arbitrators that decided the contract, not just that part of it, but the whole contract, gave an arbitrator final disciplinary authority in cases, and that's grown since then. And it has been memorialized in a 2014 agreement between the city and the union that makes a gentleman, Jeffrey Selchik of Albany, the arbitrator in police matters. He was a person who decided the Gugino matter and a number of other matters, including the case of Joseph Hassett, who the police department tried to fire after the district attorney said he had, quote, irredeemable issues of credibility, unquote, and could not testify. He was reinstated, ordered reinstated by the arbitrator following a hearing. And so the mayor and the police chief each sat for about an hour, or not an hour, an entire day each, in two unrelated lawsuits that may have the potential to change the way that police are disciplined in the city of Buffalo.
Interesting, because we know an arbitrator has a lot to say in this particular matter. But when you talk with critics, what do they want from the mayor as well as the police commissioner?
What they point to is the city's charter, and the city's charter dating back to 1949 and an earlier version in 1914. But the one that's currently in play says that the police chief has power to discipline police officers. And so the critics and police reform advocates say, hey, the charter means what it says, and we should go by the charter as opposed to collective bargaining agreements with unions. That point of view has been backed by the highest court in the state, the Court of Appeals. And this isn't really anything new. In 2006, the Court of Appeals ruled in New York City that police discipline was not a matter of collective bargaining, but rather was governed by the New York City Charter. And that charter reads remarkably like the charter here in Buffalo. More recently, in November, the police union was opposing a move by the city of Rochester to put police discipline in the hands of a civilian review board. The court ruled that no, you couldn't do that because the city of Rochester in 1985 repealed the provision in its charter, which gave the city the power to discipline officers. And so the point is the same in both the New York case and the more recent Rochester case. In each case, the state's highest court has said their charter is what decides who has the power to discipline police officers.
That's interesting. What does the PBA say? Have you reached out to them?
Oh, yes, I have reached out to them, and I've not received a return call. John Evans, the president of the union, was called to a deposition in the Gugino lawsuit, and that was cut short, and the two sides now are fighting about whether he was responsive enough, whether, frankly, he was being coached by his lawyer who sat there on how to answer questions. And so that's an open question about when he's going to testify.
Yeah, and you know, all eyes are on this because people are always watching police, but this is just not a Buffalo issue. No. This is happening across the country. And when you think about it, you have to look at the data. What does the data show when it comes to cases like this? This is just not a problem here.
No, it's an issue nationwide, and perhaps one of the best studies was conducted by, I believe it was Villanova University, a researcher there, who looked at 624 arbitration cases from across the country. And roughly, just very generally roughly, arbitrators ruled for the cities or police departments roughly half the time, and for unions roughly half the time, which shouldn't necessarily be a surprise because arbitrators are chosen mutually by the two parties, and if you rule in favor of one party all the time, then you're not likely to get much work. And so there's a school of thought that's saying, yeah, roughly 50-50 is what you're going to see. In that particular study, there's some really questionable cases made by arbitrators. One was in the city of Seattle, where an officer was ordered reinstated after punching a drunken woman who was handcuffed. He broke her eye socket. She sued the city and collected, I think, $195,000. This came after he had released a suspect in a domestic violence incident who promptly went home and killed his roommate and was convicted of murder. That particular case was overturned by a court. But there are other ones, notably in San Antonio, where an officer, excuse me, where an officer who he went into a house and arrested somebody without a warrant. Then, shortly thereafterward, he challenged a suspect to a fight to get out of DUI charges. They sought to fire him, and they said no. And so then, while he was on after a last chance agreement, he was caught again challenging another person to a fight, and was ordered reinstated after 45 days. They really couldn't get rid of him.
So this really shows that there's a lot going on here. I think we're going to have to definitely continue this conversation because I think we need to look into see whose hands really are tied here. Bruce Rushton from our partners at Investigative Post, thanks for being on the 530 today. It's an issue that I'm sure a lot of people are watching closely, from the police department to the general public.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks for you for being here.